Ladies and gentlemen, you're probably wondering why I called you here. Well, this is why we're here. 2001, when the ape is playing with that bone, and he's like, like, boom, and he's like, and it goes flying up in the air.
According to Sammy in his recently published autobiography,
Yeah.
you fired him from the band. Is that true?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. Well, it was definitely a pioneering album and one of the most
let's not
original
forget-
and diverse
yeah.
records of its kind, really.
Yeah, but let's not forget Jeff Beck's Blow by Blow, which
Well-
influenced me very heavily. Well, it was so debilitating that I didn't pick up a guitar for 2.5 years.
Wow.
These hands did not touch strings for over 2 years. I'm just really fortunate that after, these songs were written 40 years ago that we're playing. And we're introducing some Gamma songs into the set too. But these 40-year-old songs that I penned when I was in my 20s are still loved by people. It's a great feeling. They sing along with them, and I love it.
Okay, well, this is Sean Perry with VintageRock.com, and I am sitting here with a true guitar hero, Mr. Ronnie Montrose. How are you doing today, Ronnie?
It's good to be here, and thanks for calling me a hero.
You most definitely are. You're one of mine. I grew up listening to your music, and it's great to sit here with you
I appreciate it.
today.
I never get tired of hearing it. Thank you.
Cool. Well, now last night you played the Canyon Club, right?
Yes.
How'd that go?
Spectacular.
Yeah.
Absolutely spectacular. People there into it. I mean, I'm just really fortunate that after, these songs were written 40 years ago that we're playing. And we're introducing some Gamma songs into the set too. But these 40-year-old songs that I penned when I was in my 20s are still loved by people. It's a great feeling. They sing along with them, and I love it.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
It's real good.
And of course, you're playing tonight here at the Coach House, which
Yes,
is
we
where
are.
we're at.
Yep.
And so, I mean, what can we expect to see? You're going to play, like you were saying, you're going to play some of your older material. Just give us a little.
No, that's all I'm playing is older Montrose material, and we're working Gamma songs into the set. But it's all Montrose all the time for the most part. Doing old school power trio, guitar, bass, drums, and vocal rock. That's it.
Cool. Well, tell me about your band. Who's in your band these days?
I've got Steve Brown on drums, and Dan McNay on bass, and Keith St. John on vocals. And what's been happening is I've been for years going through this kind of a revolving door thing with players. I've always had like a stable of players that could come in and fill in, and when I felt like doing any kind of shows, like an instrumental, acoustic, and rock like I'm doing now. But I finally decided that I really need to hone in, and it just felt right for me now to hone in and pick a band that I can really count on to be this growing, organic, natural thing, and that's what I've come up with this combination.
Well, now going back, of course, one of your big breaks, of course, is when you played with Van Morrison.
Yes, it was.
And what do you recall about that experience?
Just a fantastic experience, and being, just having been in little, bands, little sort of hippie bands in San Francisco. I've told the story many times, but I got a call asking if I would like to play with Van Morrison, and I was under the impression that they wanted my little hippie band to open the show for Van Morrison, and the guy goes, "No, you play guitar with Van Morrison." Yeah. After I got up off the floor, I said, "Yeah, I'll go audition." The first time I was with him in rehearsals, it was very obvious to me that I was in the presence of genius.
Right.
His ability to take a simple melody and make a song and speak straight from channel, straight through his heart about life situations was, even at my young age, I recognized it. So it was a fantastic experience.
For that, you became kind of, I guess, a short-term member of the Edgar Winter Group. You just played on the one album.
Yeah, we did an album and a tour.
Right.
And that had basically come from playing with Van and playing with just playing around the area, and somebody had heard of me, and then they called from New York. A record company guy called from New York and asked me if I would like to come out and try out with the Edgar Winter Group. And I had seen Edgar in Kansas, the White Trash Band, when I was doing a little tiny stint with Boz Scaggs. And Boz opens his show for Edgar, and that was my first time I'd seen a full Edgar Winter show. I saw him at the Fillmore West with his brother Johnny, where he was like would come out as a featured Winter brother, and it was a pretty mind-blowing show too. So when I got the call, I went out there. I think I went out on I went out on a round trip ticket and never used the return. Just I was there. I was in.
Of course, you hired a singer named Sammy Hagar.
Yes, I did.
And who we all know hasn't done too badly.
Done pretty well.
You guys did a couple records together, and of course you wrote some of your most iconic songs during that period.
I think we all write those kind of songs at the early parts of our writing experience. You don't have so much of a vocabulary and so much awareness of all the nuance of writing, so you give it 100%, everything you've got, which is maybe limited, but it's concentrated, mm-hmm. It's intense, because that's all you know how to do. So,
right.
Yeah. So that was what we were.
And how did you come up with a riff, say, for like Bad Motor Scooter?
I was sitting in the studio. I'm always tinkering around with effects and just things to do with my amps and guitars, and mm-hmm. had a little Fender amp with 310 speakers in it, and I had a fuzz tone called a Big Muff, and I was just playing around, and I tuned my guitar to a D chord for slide just to play around with it. Turned the fuzz tone on and turned the amp on and started playing around, and then wow, that kind of, it's like it reminded me, when I look back on it, it reminded me of the 2001 when the ape is playing with that bone, and he's like, like, boom, and he's like, and it goes flying up in the air, right. And that's what happened with that beginning. I was like, all of a sudden it dawned on me that, and I'm going, making this thing. Mm-hmm. And I look into the control room, because we had already recorded Bad Motor Scooter, and we're just going to use it as a little sort of another song on the mm-hmm. record. Mm-hmm. And I see Ted Templeman, the producer, and I see Don Landy, the engineer, throwing up their arms saying, "Hold it, stop, don't move, stay there." And they ran back into the tape room, got Bad Motor Scooter, put it on the thing, and they said, "Go!" And then that became the signature intro to Bad Motor Scooter. Very serendipitous, but a lot of things happen like that. Yeah, so.
Cool. Well, I mean, that album, I mean, it's set the gold standard for, short, punchy, hard rock. But
once again, that wasn't what we were trying to do. Mm-hmm. We weren't trying. We had no idea that we were setting any sort of a standard. Like I said before, we were playing 100% up to the ability that we had.
Right.
So our songs were short, intense, punch. That was what they were.
Right. How do you assess the legacy of this record now, looking back at 35 plus years?
I just feel very fortunate, like I said, very fortunate and very blessed that music I've made, I penned in my 20s, is still somewhat relevant today, mm-hmm. and respected and revered by my peers, and by a lot of people. I get grandpas bringing their grandchildren to the show. I get fathers bringing their sons, uncles bringing their nephews and nieces. Mm-hmm. All ages coming in to discover this music, and it's really a good feeling when it's all ages and there's kids there, and they said, "My uncle loves you, and now I do too," and they're singing along with it. It's a good feeling, yeah.
Cool. Well, now, of course, after those first two records, the first two Montrose records, according to Sammy in his recently published autobiography, you fired him from the band. Is that true?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
And I told him, I know we joke about it now, though, but no, there's another example of the limited space for nutritional creative force mm-hmm. from different entities. So Sammy, like I did with Edgar Winter, Sammy and I were at a situation where there wasn't enough room for us to operate in that flower pot known as Montrose,
Right.
So he went his own way, but it happened to be a situation where he was a little more fighting about it, and so it was just a question where I had to make the move to say, go do your thing, and it's a good, go. Right. I told him we did some reunion shows, and I've joked with him, and we joke around a lot. It's funny, but I said, "Now see," he said, "Yeah, you fired me, Ron, so and I said, "Well, yes, I did." And I said, "It's a really good thing I did, because you wouldn't have gone on your own, you wouldn't have gone with Van Halen, you wouldn't have had Cabo Tequila, so now you owe me." And he goes, "All right, give me my checkbook out, But no, we joke around all the time. Yeah.
That's cool. I mean, and then after that, of course, you broke the band up and you did this incredible instrumental album called Open Fire. Where did that come from? What was the inspiration behind that?
Where that came from was that I was doing. I did not want to become formulaic. I'd done the records with band with Sammy, and then we changed players, and then I had Bob in the band. I had different players. We used keyboards, brought things in, and then all of a sudden I felt like I was getting stuck in this. From I mean, obviously, I'm really the only one who was in control of that, but I wasn't recognizing that at the time, and I was having record companies and managers and everyone try to get me into this formula of saying, "Now you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to have a hit." It was that thing that I just shy away from, and so there were many of my peers that played guitar back in the time, where everybody was always saying, "Yeah, I'm going to do a solo record. I got guitar, I got to get out." Well, I had guitar I had to get out, but didn't say I was going to. I did it. And I got just such mixed response from it, but once again, it was something that I had to do. It's always been my way, and I've realized that early on, that your muse is very important to follow. Mm-hmm. And so I did.
Well, it was definitely a pioneering album, and one of the most
let's
original
not forget,
and diverse records of its kind, really.
Yeah, but let's not forget Jeff Beck's Blow by Blow, which influenced me very heavily.
Well, then, like you said, you kind of went back to your solo career. You made some more instrumental albums.
Right.
Speed of Sound, of course, was more that.
I very much enjoyed
80s.
doing that.
Yeah, that's a great record. Great record. Now, Gamma, of course, reunited a few years ago. So, I mean, it must have been something you wanted to go back to, right?
Yeah, actually, I just knew that I didn't know how long everybody was going to be, going their separate ways, and it was an opportunity that had. Davey Pattison and I were living in the same area, as was Denny Carmassi, and I contacted everyone, and Glenn Letch was there as well, and contacted everyone and asked if they were interested, and everybody said, "We're in, let's do it," and it was a situation that I put together, and had a friend of mine, Ed Roth, come in and play keyboards, and. Good friend and just a gentle soul and a great person, Troy Lucchetta from Tesla, the drummer, big fan of mine, and I'd known him for quite a while, and said, "Come and use my studio," and we were in, boom, and got it done in a month, and it was a really fun record to do.
Well, and you said you've reunited with the original Montrose band with Sammy. Is that something you think might happen
that
again?
may happen, and the reason that may happen is just basically on a whim. I mean, if we're all in the same area at the same time, and we all say, "Let's go do some shows," which is the way it's been all the times that the original band has been together. It's been a whim. Sammy said, "I'm doing this. How about getting together?" And sure, let's go.
Right. Now, I'd read that you had prostate cancer.
Yes, I did.
A couple years ago, and
a few years ago, yeah.
And you beat that, and everything.
Yes, I did. There's some wood right there. Yes, I did.
Great.
It was a very, very intense experience, and it's one of those things. Well, it was so debilitating that I didn't pick up a guitar for 2.5 years.
Wow.
These hands did not touch strings for over 2 years, and but I went through it. I got through it, and then I picked this instrument back up, and I said, "I really like playing this thing," and it all came back, and it was like. I've said it before, but. I can't wait to wake up in the morning. There's not enough hours in the day for me and days in the week to get up and do what I want to do, which is not just guitar. It's a lot of other things, but yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, now after this tour, do you have any plans?
I want to do a whole acoustic, a serious, big production acoustic show with players, keyboards, percussionist, upright bass player, video screen, quad sound, the whole thing. It's a vision I have that I know I will have a whole bunch of fun doing. Certainly not something that I can just call up some players and go, "Oh, boys, we're going to go play." No, it takes a lot of pre-production, like a Broadway play almost. But I'm not going to limit myself to just this year with this band because it's so much fun. I may go all through next year and be touring across the country. I don't know.
And you think you'll go in the studio and cut some tracks and make a record anytime soon?
I don't see that happening right now. I'm focusing. Well, you know what? There will be a recording if this band turns out to be like I'm thinking it's going to do. Yeah, we may go ahead and document this and make a DVD of a performance with this band in this current lineup.
Well, we could certainly use a proper DVD from you.
I'd like to do one.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. Well, I just want to thank you for sitting down and talking with us.
My pleasure.
Ronnie.
It really is.
And have a great show tonight. And
yes, sir, I will.
And this is Sean Perry with VintageRock.com signing off.
This is Ronnie Montrose with Sean Perry from VintageRock.com. Thank you very much.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.